The heavy oak doors of the Charleston Plaza closing behind Sarah Jenkins felt like a vault ceiling, locking her away from the person she truly was. Her husband, David, squeezed her hand, a familiar weak attempt at reassurance she'd received all evening as they prepared. She squeezed back, offering a smile she didn't feel. The air inside the grand ballroom was warm, thick with the scent of expensive perfume and aged bourbon. Crystal chandeliers, dripping light like frozen waterfalls, cast a soft, golden glow over the murmuring crowd. This was the 50th anniversary of the Vance Hospitality Group and the pinnacle of Charleston's old money society. Sarah felt the immediate, assessing glances. Her burgundy silk dress was simple, professional, a stark contrast to the glittering sequin gowns around her, but it held a quiet authority of its own. Beside her, her father-in-law, Arthur Vance, was in his element. At 60, immaculate in a classic tuxedo, he navigated the room not as a host, but as a king holding court. His wife, Eleanor, drifted at his side, a notable string of pearls at her throat, her smile passive and practiced. Arthur. Marvelous evening. A contemporary clapped him on the back. Arthur beamed. He pulled David forward. Senator, you know my son David. The future of the company. The men shook hands warmly. Arthur then gestured vaguely toward Sarah. And of course, this is David's wife, Sarah. David's wife, Sarah. Not Sarah Jenkins. Not Sarah Vance. Just an addendum. Arthur quickly steered the family toward a circle of investors, his voice booming as he discussed profit margins, ignoring Sarah completely. An older woman in the group turned to Sarah with a polite, inquisitive smile. And what is it that you do, my dear? Before Sarah could formulate a reply, Arthur laughed, a short, dismissive sound. Oh, Sarah keeps the home fires burning, he said, patting her shoulder condescendingly. She's adjusting to the Vance lifestyle, aren't you, dear? The implication was clear. She did nothing. David, visibly uncomfortable, leaned in. Sarah, can I get you a drink? Champagne. Nonsense, David, I need you. Arthur intercepted, his tone sharp. The staff can get her a drink. He turned and, with an imperious flick of his wrist, snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. Sarah flinched. It was a gesture one used for a dog, not a person, and certainly not a daughter-in-law. The polite, southern microaggressions she could normally parry felt sharper tonight, more intentional. As Arthur leads David away, he leans in and whispers to his son, loud enough for Sarah to hear, "Try to keep her near the appetizers, son. Let the adults talk." If you are still watching and feeling the injustice of that moment, please comment with the number 8 below just to let us know you're here with Sarah. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I truly encourage you to subscribe to Black Brilliance and turn on that notification bell. Your support helps us continue to create these powerful stories that showcase resilience and inspire us all. Now, let's see what happens next. Left alone near a towering display of shrimp cocktail, Sarah straightened her spine. She was a guest in this family, but she wouldn't be treated like furniture. The sting of Arthur's words, "Let the adults talk," still hung in the air, a sharp metallic taste in her mouth. She refused to retreat. Instead, she picked up a small plate, her eyes instinctively assessing the room's layout, the exits, and the security points, a habit ingrained and automatic that she couldn't break. She decided to mingle on her own terms. She didn't have to wait long. Eleanor Vance, her mother-in-law, drifted over, her pearl necklace gleaming. "Dear, you look lovely," she said, her smile genuine but tinged with nervousness. She leaned in conspiratorially. "My goodness, this music is so modern," she whispered, though the string quartet was playing a gentle Vivaldi piece. Sarah smiled politely. "Arthur is just intense, you know," Eleanor continued, giving Sarah an apologetic look that asked for forgiveness without offering any defense. "Don't mind him." With that, she squeezed Sarah's arm and drifted away, leaving Sarah feeling even more isolated. Refusing to be sidelined, Sarah spotted a city councilman she recognized from a local charity event. She approached him, introducing herself simply as Sarah Jenkins. They quickly fell into an engaging conversation about Charleston's historic preservation efforts. The councilman seemed genuinely interested in her perspective. Sarah felt herself relax, just slightly. The relaxation was short-lived. Arthur spotted her. He strode over, a false, jovial smile plastered on his face. "Councilman, wonderful to see you," he boomed, cutting Sarah off mid-sentence. "You simply must come meet our new architect. He has some fascinating ideas for the waterfront." Without a backward glance, Arthur physically steered the councilman away, leaving Sarah standing alone mid-sentence, her plate of untouched shrimp in hand. Later, as she stood near a group discussing the restaurant industry, Arthur's voice cut through the chatter. He had seen her listening. "Of course, this is all very high level," he announced to the group, though he was looking at her. "Sarah comes from a much simpler world. Fast food is probably more her speed." A few people chuckled nervously, looking away, embarrassed for her. Just as Sarah felt a flush of true, hot anger rise in her cheeks, she saw a new guest arriving, a man with the unmistakable bearing of power, flanked by aides, Senator Hayes. Arthur Vance's eyes lit up. Senator Hayes wasn't just a guest, he was the guest, and Arthur saw his chance to secure his legacy. The insults from earlier, the appetizers and fast food comments, echoed in Sarah's mind as she watched her father-in-law straighten his bow tie and smooth his tuxedo jacket. This was the performance he had been waiting for all night. As Senator Hayes scanned the room, his gaze briefly passed over Sarah with a flicker of confusion, as if trying to place her, before moving on. The string quartet in the corner softly transitioned into a rendition of America the Beautiful. "David. Sarah. Come with me," Arthur commanded, not waiting for a reply. He practically dragged them across the ballroom floor. "Senator Hayes. A pleasure. A true pleasure. I'm Arthur Vance," he said, shaking the senator's hand vigorously. "Arthur, good to see you." "A fine celebration," the senator replied, his smile polished and professional. "You know my son, David, of course." "The future of our company," Arthur said, pushing David forward. The senator nodded politely. Arthur's hand then landed heavily, patronizingly, on Sarah's shoulder. "And this," he said, his voice dropping just enough to signal her insignificance, "is David's wife." The senator, a true politician, immediately turned to include her, extending his hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Vance," he began. Before Sarah could even reply, Arthur cut in with a dismissive laugh. "Oh, don't worry about her, Senator," he said, his voice oily and condescending. "She's just a guest. She's not involved in this serious business, I assure you. I'm sure she'd be happier admiring the decorations." The moment the words, "just a guest," left Arthur's mouth, the senator's polite smile vanished. His eyes, sharp and assessing, narrowed, focusing intently past Arthur and directly onto Sarah. The air crackled. Just as this silent, tense assessment occurred, a man in a sharp suit, the hotel's head of security, suddenly broke through the crowd, heading directly for their group, his eyes locked only on Sarah. That moment, Arthur finally said it right to the senator's face. "The tension is unbearable. If you are still watching and you are on the edge of your seat waiting to see this arrogance shattered, please comment with the number 8 below. Let us know you're here for the moment of truth. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you will not want to miss what happens next. Subscribe to Black Brilliance and ring that bell. Your support helps us tell these crucial stories where brilliance is finally recognized." Now, let's continue. The sharp-suited security chief, Captain Miller, moved past the senator as if he wasn't there, stopping directly in front of Sarah. Arthur's dismissive line, "She's just a guest," hung heavy in the air, a stark, ugly contrast to the scene unfolding. Arthur's face, which had been annoyed at the interruption, began to curdle into confusion. Senator Hayes's eyes, however, widened slightly, a flash of recognition dawning before the security chief even spoke. Captain Miller, a man clearly ex-military, did not look at Arthur. He did not look at the senator. He looked only at Sarah. He snapped to attention, his back rigid, his heels clicking together on the marble floor. He executed a perfect, crisp military salute. The gesture was so sharp, so precise in the relaxed, opulent ballroom that it felt like a gunshot. "Lieutenant Colonel Jenkins," Miller said, his voice clear and respectful, cutting through the murmur of the party. "We weren't aware you were on the guest list." "It's an honor to have you, ma'am." The silence that followed was deafening. "Lieutenant Colonel," Arthur's face drained of all color. His condescending smile froze, then collapsed. "Lieutenant Colonel," he stammered, his gaze darting weakly from the captain to Sarah, his mind unable to process the words. David, beside him, looked as if he'd been struck. The entire group was frozen. Before Sarah could even return the acknowledgement or dismiss the captain, Senator Hayes broke into a broad, delighted smile, stepping past the frozen Arthur as if he were a statue, and extended his hand warmly. "Colonel Jenkins, I knew I recognized you." "Don't just guess me, Arthur," Senator Hayes boomed, his voice full of laughter as he warmly shook Sarah's hand, pointedly ignoring Arthur's frozen form. The senator, a man who understood power, was clearly delighted by this turn of events. Arthur's dismissive line, "She's just a guest," was still echoing in the small, silent circle. The senator, still holding Sarah's hand, turned to the gathering crowd, which was drawn in by the security chief's salute. The string quartet had just finished America the Beautiful, adding an ironic punctuation to the moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," the senator announced, his politician's voice carrying easily, "for those of you who don't know, this is Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Jenkins, recently retired." Arthur looked as if he might be sick. David, however, was staring at his wife with a look of absolute, unbridled pride. "She was one of the sharpest minds in military intelligence," the senator continued, his voice warm with genuine respect. "Her strategic briefings helped shape national policy. She is a genuine American hero." The atmosphere flipped. The word hero changed everything. The VIPs, the CEOs, the investors, the councilmen, who had followed Arthur's lead in ignoring her, now surged forward. "Colonel, an honor," one said. "I'd love to get your thoughts on the global supply chain," said another. But an older woman, the wife of a federal judge, bypassed the men. She gently took Sarah's free hand, her eyes kind. "Thank you for your service, my dear," she said warmly, her voice trembling slightly. "My husband also served." Sarah, gracious and calm, thanked her. In an instant, she had become the center of the most important group in the room. And Arthur Vance, the host, the king, was left standing alone, pale and invisible, watching the daughter-in-law he had mocked hold court with the very people he had tried so desperately to impress. Hours later, as the party thinned, Sarah was retrieving her coat from the check. Arthur approached her alone. His usual towering posture was gone. He looked small and frail. "Sarah," he began, his voice barely a whisper, "I owe you an apology." The apology hung in the quiet lobby, a weak, broken sound from a man who had built his world on arrogance. Sarah looked at her father-in-law, seeing not the titan of industry he portrayed, but just a man, diminished by his own prejudice. David joined them, placing a proud, supportive hand on Sarah's back as he retrieved her coat. Arthur, seeing he had her attention, tried again, his voice thick with shame. "I had no idea," he whispered, "who you were. I am so sorry." Sarah nodded slowly, accepting the words. "Thank you, Arthur. But that's the problem." He looked up, confused, his eyes searching hers. "You shouldn't have to know I'm a colonel to treat me with respect," she said, her voice not angry, but clear and firm as steel. "I deserved basic respect because I am your son's wife, and because I am a person." She let the words sink in, the lesson that needed to be learned. "My value isn't based on a title or a rank. It shouldn't have mattered if I was a colonel or a cashier." The truth of it hit Arthur, harder than the public humiliation had. He had built his life on judging people by their titles, their bank accounts, their last names, and their color. All he had seen was a young black woman who didn't come from money. Now he finally saw her. He nodded slowly, the arrogant mask completely gone, replaced by a deep, genuine shame. "You're right," he said, and for the first time, the words were simple and true. "You're right." As they walked out into the cool Charleston night, Arthur held the door for his daughter-in-law, a simple act that, for the first time, felt like genuine respect. In the end, it wasn't the senator's praise or the captain's salute that marked the true victory. It was the quiet understanding in a hotel lobby. True worth is not measured by a uniform, a bank account, or the color of one's skin, but by the simple, unconditional dignity we show to one another. Like a stubborn lock finally turning, A mind closed by prejudice can always be opened by the simple key of truth. What part of Sarah's quiet strength or Arthur's transformation resonated most with you? Share your reflections in the comments below. If stories that celebrate resilience and challenge assumptions are what you value, consider joining our community at Black Brilliance to ensure this light continues to shine.